So you were mentioning, I know we were just chatting before about the cold, about that Truck House Life guy we were watching.
Yeah.
You were talking about upstate New York. I thought you grew up in New Jersey.
I did.
So when did you spend time in upstate New York?
Well, after I finished Ed Parker's instructor program, my parents needed me to come home. There was some family business they wanted me to help take care of. And on the way home, I was in that accident with those people.
Oh, that was on the way back to New Jersey?
Back to New Jersey. And when I got back home, my mom had moved up to New York. So I went up, to see. I saw my dad for a while, and then I went up to see my mom. And I was recuperating from the accident. I had the broken ribs and a concussion, and I had to take it easy. And so it was right at the Canadian border. Man. It's in the snow belt, and it's it routinely, in the wintertime, it would routinely get down to minus 30, minus 40. Not too far away, there's a mountain called Owl's Head, and one night they had a minus 80 up with the wind chill factor. That's cold. That's real cold.
An Owl's Head?
Owl's Head. It's a mountain that we live not too far from.
Gotcha. So your parents lived there after you guys were kids?
Oh yeah, this is after the service, and
so they moved out of New Jersey.
No, my dad stayed in New Jersey.
Gotcha.
My mom and dad were separated.
Gotcha. I see.
And so I stayed up there and recuperated in New York for I don't know, 9 months, something like that.
Did you ever deal with temperatures like that when you were growing up in New Jersey?
Nope.
Nothing like that?
Nope, not even close. Even when it was snowstorming out, it wasn't no minus 20, minus 30. If it got down to minus anything, usually it was, in the 20s. It would get down to that if there was a snowstorm or something, but it never was like that.
Right. Yeah. I've dealt with single digits, and end up being in Oklahoma and stuff, but I've never dealt with anything like -10, -20, nothing like that.
It's weird when you go outside. You can go outside in upstate New York, and if you're walking around, if the sun would be out, it could be 10 degrees, and it was actually, you felt warm.
Right.
At 10 degrees.
That's crazy. That
is crazy.
So you say so I wanted to touch on this accident that you got in. You got in this accident on the way back from California. I thought it was the way to California.
No.
From New Jersey. So what happened? So why were you even?
Well, I was gonna go. I had to come home, and so back in the day when California was a lot different than if you could find rides. They had this site you could go to. It was in the paper, actually. It was called Rides and Riders. And people who had vehicles, they were driving to somewhere. And if somebody wanted to go, you could throw in your money. You get a bunch of people. This guy had a van. And you throw in your money, and you could drive wherever you want to, where they were heading.
Right.
So the guy was heading to New York, and I didn't know any of these people. In the van, there was 6 of us, 4 sitting in the back and 2 up in the front. And after we crossed the Rockies, we came down on the eastern side of the Rockies, and it goes into flatlands.
Right.
Long highways.
Oh yeah.
Nothing around.
Yeah, very flat. Right.
And it got towards nighttime, and the guy who was driving was from England, and there was a girl up in the front, and I was laying across the van in the back, closest to the back doors. And right before I went to sleep, I had this flash in my mind. and we're going to have a bad accident and I'm going to be the only one walking. Well, when you're traveling, you can't dwell on that kind of stuff. I mean, thoughts cross your mind all the time.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Right.
So I just shut it out of my mind. And the next thing I remember, there was a scream and a crash. And I was knocked out. And when I woke up, which couldn't have been too long, everybody was thrown out of the van. The van was on its side, and the wheels were still going around on the side that was up. And
when you woke up, the wheels were still turning, so it couldn't have been that long that you were unconscious.
Right, and I woke up, and I got up.
And you're out. And where were you?
Like, we were in the flatlands,
just in the middle of nowhere.
Middle of nowhere.
Do you remember what highway you were on?
I think it was Highway 80.
Okay.
Just outside of Burlington, Colorado.
Interesting. Okay. So you woke up and the wheels were still spinning.
As soon as I stood up, I knew I had broken. I mean, it was in the service, to give you quite a bit of first aid training and not emergency medicine, but emergency
enough to know what you're
what you're possibly dealing with. And I knew right away I had broken ribs. So I put my hand on my ribs, try to hold it. So I didn't want my ribs. I didn't know how bad they were broken. I didn't want them to puncture my lung. I didn't want to be moving it around. And everybody else was out. Some people were.
Nobody was conscious.
No, a couple people were conscious and screaming. There was two girls. The girl in the passenger seat, she didn't make it. She died. Unfortunately for her. Yeah, it was not a good night. And so I went from person to person, did whatever I could do. One guy had 2 dislocated shoulders. And he was like, if you ever saw the movie Exorcist, where the girl was laying in bed and she would sit up from the waist and drop back. Well, that's what was happening. This guy would get a spasm of pain. He would come up from the waist. He couldn't move his arms. He would thrash around and scream, and then he would fall back down. He kept doing that. And I kept going to people. One other girl had a dislocated shoulder, and so I had to flag down a vehicle. Well, I had to run across the median
to the other side.
To the other side of the road where traffic was coming the other way. And it had to be like 50 yards. So I ran across there and I flagged the truck down. I told them to call for an ambulance. And then I went back across and just kept going from person to person to person. It wasn't much I could do for anybody.
The injuries were too severe for you to actually give any kind of first aid.
Right. And first thing I thought of actually when I got up is, well, this is really bad. I need to find my jacket because I wasn't wearing my jacket. Everything was thrown all over the place. The stuff that was on top of the van was all over. And so I walked over. I figured if I'm going to die, I want my parents. I want them to be notified. So I know my wallet was in my jacket. So I walked over to all this pile of stuff, and it was just like, I couldn't even tell or see. I just reached into the middle of it and pulled out something, and it was my jacket. I put it on because you can go into shock when you get cold, with injuries. So in the meantime, the trucker flagged down some people, and nobody came over to help. I mean, a couple people got out, and truckers and came over and kind of looked around, but nobody really helped. There's nothing really anybody could do until ambulances got there. Well, a couple of ambulances came. They started loading people up to take them to the hospital, which was a good 20 minutes drive from where we were or more. And so they got everybody. I was the last one to go because I was walking. I guess I was hurt the least.
Sure.
So they took us to the hospital. I pretty much passed out. I don't remember much until I woke up in a bed with the other three guys. There was 4 guys and 2 girls. And the guy that was closest to me, the guy with the 2 dislocated shoulders, he was unconscious. The other 2 guys were kind of semi-conscious. And so they came in, they gave us all a shot, they put me back. I went back to sleep. And the next time I woke up, I thought, I have to get out of here. Because if I don't get up and start moving and get out of here, I might just die here. So I told the nurses, it was a Sunday no less. I told the nurses, call a doctor. I want them to sign me out, tell me where I can get the bus, because it was only a small town. So they told me, no, well, you shouldn't go. No, I'm not staying here. I went to the guy who was semi-conscious who owned a van. I told him, okay, man, I'm leaving here. I need my money. So he told me it was in his pants. I got it from next to his bed. I got my money. And I went down and hugged the walls and tried to take a shower to clean up, because how I felt I needed to try to clean up. And I broke my rib cage. That's the rib it's the front part of the rib cage that all the other ribs hook up to.
Gotcha.
I broke that bone. And I had a concussion, which really kind of scared me when I was at the crash site, because I knew I hit my head really hard on top. So I reached up and felt my head, I pulled my hand down. I expected blood, but it wasn't blood. It was like a clear liquid.
No.
Yeah. So, anyway.
And that was before you went to the hospital.
That's before I went to the hospital. They took me. I realized, I knew it. My head was throbbing.
But they didn't say you had any severe head injuries or anything like
that?
No,
they just said I had a bad concussion.
Gotcha.
And so the doctor came. I took my shower, hugged the wall, slid along the wall to get dressed. And as I was doing that, the other girl who was with us, she had a dislocated shoulder, and she had a bunch of stitches in her forehead and in her foot. But she was okay. She saw me sliding along the wall, and she asked me what I was doing, and I said I was going home. I was leaving. And she goes, well, man, I'm not staying here either. You got to wait for me. So there was a bus station nearby. They took us over to the van so we could try to get whatever was ours.
And they had towed the van somewhere, obviously.
Well, they towed it to a crash yard.
Right, yeah.
And the van wasn't square anymore. It was like all crooked.
Right.
Well,
like if you took a box and
I found out that when the guy fell asleep, we must have been going pretty fast, because when the van turned and it fell on its side and it slid like 180 some feet, and then it rolled over 3 times. That's how everybody was thrown out. How any of us survived those doors in the back, open and close,
right.
Open and close, I don't know.
Or didn't get rolled over by the van. Or the fact that none of you guys actually got crushed by that van as it was going over and over and over.
We were actually all out and further away from the van, out in front of it, where it would have went over us, but it didn't come that far. So we must have
threw you forward.
We must have been flown pretty far.
Wow.
And
so they took you over to a bus station.
Got my stuff. She got her stuff. Took us to the bus station. The rest of it's kind of a blur.
Right.
But we were sitting next to each other in the seat, and they gave me some heavy-duty painkillers and some stuff to make me not get sick.
Right.
From the painkillers.
Anti-nausea, right.
So as we were driving, everybody's kind of asleep. It was nighttime, and night came around, and the girl she got so worked up because the bus driver was going fast, and she was all scared, and I just told her, at this point, there's nothing I can do, and I don't, whatever happens is going to happen. I just need to try and pass out.
Get some sleep, right?
So when we finally got to Philadelphia, I called a friend. She went her way. She was going to Pennsylvania. She went her way, and I went mine. I don't know what happened to the other 3 guys in the van. To this day, I had no idea what happened to them. But I know the one girl who was in the passenger seat. I think she was probably the youngest of us all. She didn't
make it.
No.
I'm sorry to hear that.
She was just thrashing around, and she couldn't breathe. And I knew she had broken ribs, and I kept trying to keep her still. But a highway patrol guy came and said, "Just let her be, whatever makes her comfortable." But that's you want them to be comfortable, but sometimes by thrashing around, it only made her situation worse.
Of course, right.
Of course, when you're in that much pain, what are you going to do? So a friend picked me up, took me home to my house. My dad was in the hospital having heart surgery. So my girlfriend came by. Hadn't seen her in a while. She came by, and she took me to a couple of friends who I'd grown up with around the neighborhood, and took me up to see my dad. And I called my mom and told her what was happening, and she wanted me to come up there and recuperate. I stayed in New Jersey for about 2 weeks, and then a friend who I knew, he wanted to go up and he wanted to drive me up to where my mom was, and so he had a van. So we took his van and we drove up there, and we got up there, and he stayed and visited for about a week or 10 days, and then he left, and I stayed in New York State for about 9 months. I didn't expect to be back to the East Coast that long, but recuperating from what I was, my body I guess it healed fast, but it was painful for a long time. I had to have this thing, like a wide brace around me, and so God was, no matter what happened to me, God was looking out for me again.
Sure. And this was after the service, right?
This was after the service.
Interesting.
Yep.
Wow. Well, glad you're still here.
Yeah, me too. I mean, there's a lot of things. The service alone. I mean, went through all that, and then
how'd you get into service? Like, when
I turned 18, I joined the Navy.
You just signed up?
Mm-hmm. Myself and a friend who was going to high school with, we both enlisted together. So you can go in on a buddy system, they called it, and then you would go to boot camp together.
Gotcha.
So that's what we did.
So where'd you go to boot camp?
San Diego.
So that you went from New Jersey to San Diego for boot camp?
Yep. First time I was ever on an airplane, on a jet plane, going to take a ride from New Jersey to San Diego.
Who was the buddy? Was it Terry?
No, it was a guy named Wilmer Carr. He lives in Tampa, Florida now. We talk every now and then.
Oh, good. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you guys signed up in the buddy system, and then you guys flew to San Diego together. What was boot camp like?
Boot camp was...
And what year was this? This was like the 60s, right?
This was It was the end of 1967, because when I went to Vietnam, it was 1968. That was the year of the Tet Offensive. And I made 2 tours, 68, 69. And then at the end of 70, before they went back to another deployment, I was discharged.
Gotcha. So what was boot camp like?
Boot camp was...
I can imagine it was different than anything you had experienced previously.
They make it as hard as they can. And it was 16 weeks of, boot camp is, nobody can really expect what's going to happen in boot camp. They treat you terrible, but they're trying to indoctrinate you in the way of a military life. And, if somebody's not going to be able to be in the military, they want to know. They weed you out there.
Gotcha. That's where they figure it out.
Yeah.
Whether you got what it takes or not.
Yeah, boot camp was it was fucked up. Excuse my term in language, but it was also a way to help you really grow up.
Right.
The first time I was really away from home, and I went all the way across the country, that wasn't so bad. Boot camp was like a shock. A shock to your sensibilities. they treat you terrible, but you get to the point where, you start
manning up a little bit.
You got to do what you got to do.
Period.
There is no choice.
Nobody's going to hold your hand.
Unless you want. No. Nobody's going to hold your hand.
Yeah.
No. But, and the whole thing was a culture shock to your system.
Sure.
Everything is totally different, and you have to fall in line, and that's all there is to it.
So, so you've always been athletic and you've always been super physical. Was that the hardest part of boot camp, the physical part, or was it more the mental?
I never had, it was more it wasn't so much, actually, it was hard, man. It was just a shock. Your body had
Sure, it's different.
You had to grow a little accustomed, and you don't have much time. I mean, 16 weeks, it's 4 months, but that's really not that long. Not really. I mean, there's, you have to learn things, you have to be able to do things, you have to fit in, or you get out, and you don't want to get a bad discharge, not able to adapt or undesirable.
Right.
There was a lot of, I didn't think about it then, but I was glad that it was just another phase of life, and it's just something you have to go through, and I guess to kind of grow out of, you got to get out of your comfort zones, and that was a way to do it.
Sure. And it was preparing you for such a structured system that you were going to need to fit in, exactly, to a T within that system, playing your part. And I don't think that they're going to throw any random person in there and expect them to be able to fit into that part, not having that kind of
You can get an
preparation.
undesirable discharge anytime you're in the service. I mean, bucking the system and not doing what you're supposed to do. I mean, they can, but you don't want to go there because it stays with you forever.
Right. Well, I'm just talking about the structured part of the military. About you're on an aircraft carrier, right. So you did a very specific job, and all of the specific jobs are necessary to for the aircraft carrier to run smoothly. If you didn't go through boot camp and you didn't get that type of preparation, that type of structured, organized, this is how you do it every single hour of every single day type of preparation, then that aircraft carrier, that machine isn't going to run as finely tuned, because those people, what I'm saying? I think I was just making the observation that I think boot camp also trained, its participants to be able to thrive in that type of a system, that type of a structured...
In whatever job, and there's lots of different kinds of jobs in the service. In whatever kind of job they give you got to be able to fit in and do your job.
Exactly.
Some are harder than others. Some are more dangerous than others.
So you worked on the safety flight. You worked on the flight crew on the deck, on the flight deck.
I was in a ship's company, and I was in the air department, and I was a plane handler at first. I was the person that went around and removed the chocks from the wheels, unchained the airplanes, or when they were going to be parked, we would put the chocks back under the wheels. That's so they don't move. And then chain it down to the flight deck. And I did that for my first tour. Until the second tour, when we had the fire, I was promoted to work in the crash crew, which was it was a promotion, but it was
dangerous.
More dangerous. When a plane came in and crashed, everybody else would run away from it, and we would have to run to it. To
get the pilot out,
get the pilots out, get ready to,
put out a fire if necessary.
If anything that was, really bad, and I stood in for some things that were pretty bad. Where everybody else was moved away, and I had to be there with a small fire tractor ready to do my part, because a small thing on a flight deck can turn into a big thing real easy, real fast. Example was the fire on the flight deck. That was a small thing somebody made a mistake doing that turned into a massive, massive, terrible thing.
Right. So let's let me back up real quick here. So you were 2 tours to Vietnam in the Navy on what aircraft carrier?
The USS Enterprise.
So you were on the USS Enterprise 68, 69?
And 70, but I didn't go back for a third tour.
Gotcha.
I did the 68 tour and the 69 tours. 69 is when we had the fire. Right before we went back, we had the fire off the coast of Hawaii.
Right.
And that changed. Well, I mean, that
wasn't long after the fire that your second tour was over?
No. I still had another 11 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we thought we were going to go home because the Enterprise had huge holes in the flight deck and things were just...
Right.
The damage...
Casualties, all kinds of... Yeah, right.
The damage that we took was immense. So we all thought, well, we went back in Hawaii. They started taking care of people... Pearl Harbor, and in fact, we were docked right across from the Arizona Memorial.
Wow.
Got to see that every morning. And then we all thought, well, we're going to go home. I mean, there's no way they're going to be able to send us now. But that wasn't the case. They just fixed up everything they could. Some things that didn't get fixed, they didn't use for that. And they just sent us on our way.
No shit.
We went for our... It was supposed to be a 9-month tour. It ended up being an 11-month tour because we were in Hawaii for about a month.
So that happened right at the beginning of your second tour?
Yep.
Wow.
Right at the beginning. And I was promoted because I was asked to do a couple things during the fire, and I didn't question it. I went and did them. I don't know how I survived by the grace of God. Because things were happening around me that people were dying from who were 50, 60 yards away, and I was less than 10 yards away, 5 yards away maybe, running right at it and having explosions go off in my face and surviving somehow. I was lucky. I say a prayer every day in the morning that I wake up, thanking the Lord for letting me wake up again.
Sure.
And so...
We'll address the fire, too, coming up here soon. I know that was a...
No worries.
Very, intense day, and I definitely want to talk about it more. But I do want to talk about your time in Vietnam in general. So you went to Vietnam... And you were in other places too, right? Weren't you in like the Philippines too?
Oh, yeah. I went to the Philippines quite a few times. Went to Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore.
What was Japan like? I want to go to Japan.
Well, we weren't in Japan very long. We only went.
Gotcha.
We went for we were there I think for 4 days, and so just enough time to let everybody go on
land for a bit.
for an 8-hour.
Leave or whatever.
Yeah, not so much. Yeah, 8 hours. They keep some people on the ship working, and they have rotating crews. So some people got to go, some people stayed, and those people came back, and the other people got to go.
Right.
So everybody had a chance.
Right.
To go and see what it was like, but it wasn't. We weren't there very long.
Interesting. So that was all preparing for your tours.
That was,
or was that during your tours?
Yeah, that was like during the tours. We would go onto the line 30 days of flying, and then we would go somewheres for a week, and then we come back to the line, another 30 days of flying, and.
Now you say the line, that means the fighting line.
Yeah, where the
ships are.
Tonkin Gulf of Tonkin. There was usually 3 carriers rotating.
Right. And
there was day operations and night operations, and there was one where everything would overlap. Some carriers would be working nights and some carriers would be working days, and there was another one, they'd be working days and they'd rotate through nights. They try to get you all the ships to each do a certain amount of load of work, which was pretty much launch and recovery aircraft for bombing missions over North Vietnam, or helping the troops around in South Vietnam who needed air support. And so, yeah, the first cruise, it was like 8 launches a day, which was about 16, 17 hours every day, 7 days a week.
Damn.
And then the second tour was, they cut back 1 launch. There were 7 launches a day for about 14 or 15 hours a day work, 30 days at a shot. And one time we went to sea and we didn't see land for 70 days. We did flight operations, and one day we were going back to the line from, I forget where we were coming from. I think it was the Philippines. We're coming back to the line, and the North Koreans had shot down an American aircraft. You know, a couple years before that, there was Koreans had taken over a ship that was in their waters. And then when I was on it, 69, they had shot down what they said was in their airspace. It was a spy plane. And so they had taken prisoners. And we were supposed to be going to the line, and all of a sudden we realized we were heading in a different direction.
Really?
And they sent, in one day, we could see ships. The Enterprise was a flagship. And so we were like at the front of all the other ships. As we were sailing, ships just kept coming around from behind us, all kind of ships. By the next morning, all 3 aircraft carriers and their support ships were all behind us. There must have been 30, 40 ships. I mean, supply ships.
Could you see them all with your bare eyes?
Yeah, well, they were close. We could see them.
Wow. That must have been a sight.
Whoa. It was scary.
No shit.
They made all the people on the ship go onto the flight deck and qualify with the M1 rifles and 45 pistols.
Really?
Washington had broken off radio contact for 96 hours. And they said if they hadn't contacted us by a certain time, we were to launch everything.
Wow.
Everything. I mean, they had Marines on the flight deck, rifles guarding airplanes because they had nuclear bombs on them.
No shit.
Yep.
On your ship?
On all the carriers.
Whoa.
And they got down to 11 hours.
No kidding. And you guys heard? You guys got word?
Yeah, they finally had negotiated whatever.
Shit.
So one of the carriers stayed in that area.
Now, where was this again?
This is right off the coast of North Korea.
Gotcha.
And we flew flight operations up around in the North Korean waters right off of their territorial waters.
And this is after they had shot down a plane that they said was in their airspace.
Right, it probably was. It probably was. But even if it wasn't, if it was close enough,
right?
Close
enough to be questionable, they're gonna shoot it down.
Sure.
It doesn't matter.
Sure.
Right.
Just like they took the ship, and the ship was the Pueblo. That was like 2 tours before mine, before they shut down this EC-121. It was a spy plane. It had a crew of about 4, and they were gathering information. That's what military intelligence does.
Right.
And North Korea was not a friendly nation, so, excuse my language, but fuck them.
Right.
They don't care about us, so we're going to keep an eye on you. We're not trusting you.
Sure.
Who are you? You've shown that you're not trustworthy.
Sure. So that was the biggest offensive that, maritime offensive in during the Vietnam War that you ever saw personally with your eyes.
That I ever saw personally. I mean, there was times we'd be on the line and we could see other carriers on the distance, way in the distance.
But nothing like what you saw when you were approaching North Korea.
No, we have probably. Oh, and as soon as all these ships came that we could see, ordnance ships, supply ships, gasoline ships, they all kept coming up to us, unloading stuff.
No shit.
Putting stuff in the Enterprise, all the kinds of fuels that we needed for jets and all that. regular aviation fuels and all the bombs and all the food they packed. They were packing not just us; they were packing all the carriers,
all the aircraft carriers.
Yep, we had missile cruisers, destroyers. They were all around us. Plus, we each had a submarine, probably maybe two. Each carrier has a submarine. That
Really?
Oh, absolutely, all the time, along with missile cruisers, a couple of destroyers. They were there to protect us. You know, carriers are, they're the most lethal, but we are also the ones that bad boys want to come and get first.
Right.
So they had ships around us. We could see them. They weren't always real close.
Right. You carry the infrastructure
of all that shit.
Right.
We're the most important thing happening. A floating city with 70, 80, 90 aircraft, all the bombs, we were the only nuclear-powered aircraft at the time, aircraft carrier, but now all the aircraft carriers are nuclear-powered.
Where is the Enterprise now?
The Enterprise has been decommissioned, and they're tearing it apart, but they've already started. As soon as they decommissioned the Enterprise, they started building a new one.
Gotcha.
And they're actually using some of the parts from the Enterprise I was on to the new Enterprise. Because there's always been an Enterprise in the American Navy since the Revolutionary War.
Really?
Always been an Enterprise.
Interesting. Wow. So when you very first got in the Navy, was that where you were placed, like right away on the Enterprise?
That was my first.
Your first and only assignment.
Right, my first and only assignment. Once you get on the Enterprise or any aircraft carrier, as far as I know, and you start working on the flight deck, especially, that's it. You're
They're not gonna move
You're there
you.
for the
duration of your
enlistment.
Wow.
Yeah, I tried a couple of times to get off of the Enterprise.
Really?
Yeah, I tried to get in. I tried to enroll in the SEALs, and my paperwork never left the office and they told me we know. I said, what? Well, you won't let me do it because maybe you think I can't do it? And they told me, no, you probably can, but working on the flight deck is a volunteer thing. You have to volunteer. They asked me
Once you volunteer, you're fucked.
They asked me when I first got on the Enterprise. They said, "Okay, what do you want?" See, I was an airman, so I could either work on the flight deck or in the hangar deck with the airplanes, moving them around. I thought, I don't want to be in the hangar deck. I want to be able out where I can see the sunshine and shit. Well, I had no idea how dangerous it was.
Right.
I didn't know. There's a time when what you don't know can hurt you.
Yeah, sure.
So I made a decision on no information, on my just wanting to be out where I could see the sun. So you'd be out here, in the air. It could have been a mistake, but He was shielding me.
Yeah, apparently quite a bit.
Yeah.
So before you even got into combat, or actually, so you were going to these little ports so every time you would have these little stints of being on the line, and then you would go to.
First, they gave me orders. I was when you get out of boot camp, you got 30 days leave. So I went home for 30 days, and I had orders. I was going to the USS Enterprise, and that was in the waters of Vietnam at the time. So it's weird too, because I was actually going to join the Marines. My mom she told me, if you join the Marines, I'll disown you.
Really?
Yeah, because I didn't raise you this long for you to go to Vietnam and get killed. So I didn't tell her right away where I was going, and she asked me, so where are you going now? So I told her, well, I'm going to a ship, Enterprise, and I'm going to Vietnam. And she was just like, fuck. So I had orders, and I flew from Philadelphia. I flew to California. They sent me on a military aircraft. We stopped in Hawaii for a few hours, and then we flew the rest of the way, another 14 hours or so, to the Philippines. And we landed at an Air Force base, which is no longer there because Mount Minatubo exploded years after I was there.
From a volcano?
Covered it all.
No shit.
All covered with lava.
The whole Air Force base.
In fact, the Air Force base had all these bombers and all the, it was a big Air Force base. And they were getting rumblings from the Mount Minatubo, which is a volcano really close by. So
it was rumbling while you were there?
Not while I was there.
Oh, gotcha.
This is years after I had been here and left.
I see.
But they had people from volcanologists went there in the Philippines, and they were looking at this on this base, and they were set up all this equipment, and then they took a helicopter ride out around the volcano, and they just saw nothing but lava fields. And so they told the commander of the base, you probably need to evacuate this base. And he was just like, this is a major Air Force base in the Philippines.
Right.
Major.
Right.
And he was going like,
evacuate?
Yeah.
He's like, what?
Right, exactly. And so they said, okay, look, we need to take a ride. And they took him up in a helicopter, and they start flying around, and they said, you see all these mountains here with all these ridges? And he goes, yeah. He goes, they're lava fields. And you see that volcano? That's what this does. And that was it. As soon as he saw all that, they went back to the base, and he started getting everybody on evacuation procedures, and they barely made it out.
You're kidding?
No, they didn't. They barely made it out.
You're kidding me?
Nope. They got all the planes and everything off, and all the military personnel. They were just the last bit of military personnel, and the scientists just
leaving.
Barely made. It started
and
erupting.
It started to erupt.
Right.
Unbelievable.
And they had to drive through all this ash coming down.
Unfucking believable.
I know. It was amazing. But this is like years after I was there.
Sure.
Years. From the air base when we got there, they had to drive us to Subic Bay, which was about 30 or 40 miles, down these mountain roads, and it's crazy. They pulled over to, the drivers pulled over to this bar. It was like in the side of the mountain. And there was no doors. It was just a few tables and chairs and a bar where you could buy beer. So all the sailors that were in the bus, everybody went and buy beer. There was lizards on the walls, and it was so far out of anything I had ever been around. So they got us down.
So it was like carved into the side of so it was like kind of in the side of the mountain.
Yep.
They just had a couple of tables and a bar. And
right. If you could have rode right by it and maybe not have seen it.
Interesting.
Because there was all this jungle growth around it. And,
oh, no shit.
Yeah, these weren't really like wide roads. There was no lights on them. It was a two-way road, and the drivers were drunk too. They were driving weird. And
sure.
So we got to Subic Bay. They put me on a transport, an ammunition ship that was going out
to the Enterprise.
Right. So it was like we went.
So how many people were new like you getting on this little ship and headed out to the Enterprise?
There was like 3 of us.
Oh, that's just 3.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we stopped in Manila for 2 days, and then we started out to the line where the Enterprise was. This is really strange too, because we went to breakfast, or we're going to breakfast, and somebody said, there we see the Enterprise. So, cool. Went out and it was like on the horizon. Cool. We went down and had breakfast. We came back, and now the Enterprise was like real close to us. And I was like, oh man, I hope who's ever driving that got their shit together. Because this thing it's a city. It's a city.
Right.
It was scary.
Enormous, right?
A little mistake, and
right.
We were on a good sized ammunition ship. Well, we were a tiny thing compared to them. So they had a helicopter come and pick us up.
Gotcha. So they
took us over to the ship on a helicopter.
Was that the first time you'd been on a helicopter too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was an experience all in itself.
Just being in a helicopter the first time?
They strapped you in with double cross straps, and you're sitting there, and they were flying along, and then they wanted to turn to come back and settle in. And then they said, okay, the doors are open on the side of the helicopter.
On the sides, right, yeah.
So they just were driving along, and they went to make a turn. Well, they kind of turned to the side. Now, from where we were sitting looking at the sky, now we're looking straight
ocean?
down at the water.
Yeah.
I mean, we were high enough,
Sure.
But that was... I thought, actually, I don't like flying very much, but that was kind of neat.
Right.
Yeah, that was kind of neat. So they landed, and we got, they got us on the Enterprise, and they were doing what they call a stand down. That means when the day crew is going to start doing night work, they give you like a full day to do nothing, to go sleep.
Oh.
Because you're going to need your changeover.
To change the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Interesting. So it was during that time that you came on deck.
Right.
Interesting. So
And
it was like a day of rest, kind of.
So I didn't have to do anything for a full day. But when it was time to go on the flight deck, they give you they pair you up with somebody who's
Knows what they're doing, has been there.
right. And the first thing he was saying was like, man, keep a hold of me all the time. Do whatever I do. Don't move away from me, because, you'll die. You'll either get sucked up into a jet, you'll get run over by a jet, or you'll get blown over the side by a jet. Keep your head on a swivel at all times. You could not wear any religious medals or no rings on your fingers, because if a jet exhaust turned on you, it's so hot that it would actually sear the metal and make it just melt into your skin.
Damn. And that's what this dude's telling you, like your first day?
Yeah. We became good friends. I mean, and I even told him after the first couple of launches, oh my God, don't get mad at me, man, if you're tripping over me when I'm right behind you. And he said, no, it's okay. I understand. If you don't do that, you might not survive.
Right. Yeah.
So that was my introduction to the aircraft carrier. So we did 30 days of nights, and then we went back to days. Well, days is a little better because you can see more what's going on. You see, when you're on the flight deck, people can't holler to you to come and help do
It's
stuff.
too loud.
They have signals that you have to do.
Sure.
And you have to watch for them. So at night they use lights. If a plane director or yellow shirt wants a plane hand or a blue shirt, they take the light and put it on their chest, tap their chest, and you have to be. There's 3 areas where there's fly 1, fly 2, fly 3. I was in fly 3. That's from the island back to the fantail, where the jets. My work area. And so in numbers, they'll hold up the light and they'll put fingers out, so we'll know what plane to go to. And so it's
all a visual thing, and so as you said, it's really hard at night.
You have to get up on somebody's. We wear muffs.
Right.
Well, you got to get up on somebody's right on next to them and holler in their muffs for them to hear, because everything is so loud. I mean, the jets are all turned up, the tractors are running, the helicopters are turned on, running.
Damn, constantly.
In between launches, it settles down for a few minutes, because after a launch, they'll have a recovery.
Right.
Okay, so now you got planes coming in, landing on the flight decks, where everybody moves out of the way, until they get settled. Each plane gets settled in and parked, and then they'll get ready to respot the airplanes, get them ready for a next launch. That means they load them up again with bombs, fuel them, refuel them, get it all ready to go again. Another launch. As soon as that takes off, another recovery's coming in.
No kidding.
Constantly.
Really?
Yeah. So that's like 14 to 16 hours of that every day.
What are they doing? Is that constant combat operations?
Yep.
You're shitting me. Wow.
See, in the beginning in the morning, they'll have a launch. They'll have 2 launches. They'll have a launch, and they'll be gone for half an hour. Then they'll make another launch. Well, when that launch, the second launch goes off, the other planes are coming back. And then they land, and they respotted them, and they refuel them, get everything ready. And then once they're all ready to go, they launch them, and the other planes are coming back.
Damn.
So each time there's they leave, and as soon as they leave, there's other planes coming in for recovery.
And what was the longest that you would have in between launches and recoveries? or recoveries in the next launch?
A few minutes, 15
That's
minutes.
it?
At the most, maybe 15 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, because they wanted it to be, once they start a bombing campaign, they don't want an hour to go by before they pound them.
Right.
As soon as they're done pounding, just a couple minutes, pound them again.
Right.
So.
Damn.
And plus, there's other carriers doing that too. We weren't the only one.
Damn, dude.
Yeah.
Fuck.
I know. I see some of the stuff on like YouTube with carrier stuff, and I watch guys what they're doing, and I just say, wow, man, but there's a lot of things they don't really show.
Of course.
Like when we were flying in Korea, the weather was terrible. Usually when the planes come back in for recovery, you can see them. They're all kind of circling around, making their, each one's taking their turn to come in and land.
Right.
When we were in Korea, you couldn't see shit. There was icy rain. The flight deck was going up, and I was just like, oh
no
my God,
shit. And the planes were landing and taking off in that?
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Oh my God. And then you could hear them. You could hear the engines and slowing down. They changed their pitch, and then they would come out because the clouds were right down on the flight deck. I mean, we're 100 feet off the water. Clouds and rain, icy rain, and then you could hear them coming. You could hear, and then you could see them, and they would come in and land.
You just appear out of nowhere and then be on the flight deck.
Yeah, you could hear them before you could see them. Normally, you can see them a long ways before you can hear them.
Wow.
Yeah, that was terrible. That was terrible.
And these planes were coming out of the fucking
especially
clouds.
after the fire. I mean, every airplane was like, and we were where we would stand. They would move people away from the.
I can't imagine those
area.
pilots must have nuts of steel, man.
I swear to God, I don't know how they did it. I mean, I know a lot of it's done electronically, but the pilot still has to be the one that the controls keeping it
right
balanced and with the lights and all.
That's crazy.
I know those pilots were.
Wow. So how many pilots would you say were like on an aircraft carrier?
Oh, well, there's about 90 aircraft. I mean, I think we had between 85 and 90 aircraft. So you figure, and there was like 3 helicopters, each one of them has a crew, and a couple pilots for each one, because if one pilot's sick, they gotta have somebody.
Sure.
The planes, each plane has a crew. Most of the fighter aircraft, the bombers, they have one man, maybe 2, and then they have a crew of people that take care of them. So, but there's like 1 or 2 pilots for each plane, and that's it. They have to do their job.
Right.
There's no getting sick. There's none of that.
That's crazy. So you also experienced some pretty interesting things. Not during combat too, like when you were in like Thailand, you said Singapore.
We saw some stuff in Singapore.
Like, what do you mean?
There's so many things. First of all, they have these jitneys. It's like a motorcycle in the front that carries 3 or 4
with like a little
behind them.
Yeah.
They have these little buses too, to carry more people. But there's no lanes. People, I mean, you could be driving around a circle and people be coming at you. There's no everybody doesn't go one way.
It's just
it's just open. It's like
to drive.
It's like a free for all. Look out! And one time we were at a bazaar where there's lots of an outdoor market.
Sure.
And this is never saw anything like this. This is like something out of a movie. This lady comes through and she's got all these other ladies around her. They're all Muslim. They all have the things. all of them except her. They were all the rest were all in dark brown and dark and black. And this lady was in this finest, beautiful, like light green, flowing. She must have been a princess. And she had this guy who was like you see in the movie. Huge black dude with like a thing on and a sword.
Oh, no shit.
Oh, yeah.
Like straight out of Indiana Jones.
Right. And he was huge. I mean, she was beautiful. But you could only see and her skin was like a light green. She had the inside of a black olive, it has that. It's like a greenish.
Yeah.
Well, that's what her skin was kind of like.
Interesting.
And I wanted to just look at her, marvel at how beautiful this, what she was dressed in, and I was afraid.
Right.
I didn't want that guy checking me, looking at this beautiful woman.
Like,
he had this great big sword, and he was huge. And I wasn't the only one that was seeing this. I mean, there was a few of us together. You don't usually go on Liberty by yourself. And you have a couple of friends. We all go together. Not a lot, but just a few. That was amazing. I'll never forget that, man.
That's crazy.
That was like something out of a 1001 Arabian Nights or something. I mean, and all these other ladies, there's probably about 4 or 5 of them. They were all around her. You know?
Sure.
I mean, you couldn't have gotten through the circle of these ladies. Plus, seeing who was walking behind them.
Right.
You didn't want to.
Right. You didn't want to deal with it.
No. You didn't even want him to put his hand out to stop you.
Right.
You know, that's how bad he actually looked like he was out of the movies. He looked like he was like 7 feet tall. He probably wasn't that tall, but he had to be, 6'7", 6'8".
Right.
And he had this huge, and he just walked around like this right near her.
Yeah.
Man, that was like, whoa.
That's awesome.
That was one of the things in Singapore. And
you said you got in some hairy situations too a couple times.
Yeah, in the Philippines and
What happened in the Philippines?
in the Philippines, you go and, we'd poured up in Subic Bay, which is a naval port. Well, everybody there just wants your money. To them, you're shit. You're just an American who's got money, and they'll do anything to get it.
Sure.
So one of my friends, he said, well, he met this guy on the dock who was a shoe shine guy, and he told my friend, well, when you come on shore, come to this bar, and he gives him a card, and said, this is a nice bar, you'll like it. The Philippines, this is a place called Olongapo City. You went into Olongapo, on both sides of the streets were nightclubs, as far as you could see.
Sure.
And each one of them had a rock and roll band, and they were all blaring music. And nothing but hookers in all these bars.
And amazing singers, because everybody in the Philippines can sing their ass off.
Man, it was weird though. But you couldn't trust anybody. I mean, you had to make sure that your wallet was safely somewhere, because they tried to pickpocket you or try to rob you everywhere. Sure. It wasn't a nice place.
Sure.
Not even close.
So
we went to the bar, and they wanted this guy. He introduces my friend to this other guy a few guys are playing cards. So they come over and they ask him, "Do you want to play some cards?" The light bets, and I could see it happening, unfolded in front of me.
So was it a nice bar, or was it a dive?
It was a bar. It wasn't a nice bar,
right?
But it wasn't like some hot,
right,
bar you
was
really
just
want to go
bar.
and visit all the time. Yeah. So every hand that they played, my friend lost. Every hand. Even if he had a good hand, he lost. Every hand. Took all his money. Then all these guys were around us, all these Filipinos, and then they're starting to tell us, well, you guys, wouldn't you lend him your money?
Yeah, right.
It's like, I'm broke. I don't have anything to give. Well, why don't you send somebody back to the ship and get some more money? No, I don't know anybody who's got any money. So he lost all his money. And then they finally said, okay, well, I guess we're done playing cards for now. So, it was like, God, are we going to
have to fight our way out of here? Or,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's been a couple.
But you didn't have to. Everything.
Luckily, yeah. But it was like
they were content with the money they received.
Yeah, which was probably $150 or something. Which then for sailors was a lot.
Right.
We didn't get paid what they get paid nowadays.
Sure.
When we went into service, it was like base pay was $149 a month.
A month.
And you got sea pay, which was about $14 a month. And then you got
hazard pay or danger pay for being on flight crew.
If you got combat pay.
Combat pay.
That was $55 a month.
Okay.
Then you got if you worked on a flight deck, you got hazardous duty pay.
Hazardous duty pay.
Which was $65 a month.
Gotcha.
Which was, that money could build up pretty quick because you're not going to port all the time.
Right.
But that little bit of money for putting your life on the line every day for 14 hours a day.
Less than $300 a month.
Not much, yeah. Not much.
Wow.
Not much.
What a trip.
And people don't notice, but when you go into service, they give you your uniform shit. They don't give them to you. They take that money out of your pay. It's not like,
You pay for your clothes.
This is part of what you get.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, this is part of what you get, but you're paying us back for it. And you better take care of what you got.
Right.
It better be, if we want to have an inspection, you better be able to show your sea bag and all your shit.
Right. Wow, what a trip.
Yeah.
Wow, what a trip indeed.
Yeah, it was an experience. And of course, I was only 18 at the beginning, and I was pretty homesick. Everybody was who first went,
Sure.
They were all homesick. They write letters home, and it got to the point after the Enterprise fire and going to sea again to Vietnam and going to Korea and all that, I wasn't even writing home.
Right.
Because all I cared about was surviving
right.
each day.
Right.
So finally, the division officer had to come and tell me.
Write home to your mom.
My parents have wrote letters to me. Why are you not writing home?
Right.
And it's just like, who cares? I'm here. They're there. They're doing whatever. They're living their lives. Well, I got to live my life too. And so I got to concentrate on being able to go to sleep every night. Hopefully I make it through the day.
Right.
And nothing bad happens to me. And I've seen bad things happen to people, getting blown over, getting sucked up into a jet intake.
You've seen that actually happen?
I sat right next to an airplane that sucked up a guy, and he survived. Normally, people who get sucked up...
He fucking survived being sucked into a jet engine.
Luckily for him,
what?
The pilot and the plane director told, it all started happening,
shit.
and he told him to cut his engines fast enough, because normally you die because it collapses your lungs and it sucks your eyeballs out.
Oh my God.
And this guy, luckily, it sucked all his upper clothes off, his vest, his helmet, his ears and all that shit down to his shirt, and he lost some fingers.
Oh my God.
But because it's right into the engine and intake of the jet.
Good Lord.
And all this fire starts exploding out of the back of the plane. You think, oh my God, where goes another one? We're going to have another
explosion. Right. Oh my God. Wow. I'm glad the dude survived. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That happened when the dude was sitting right next to you?
No, he was actually one of the guys working down around getting it ready to take off. He was on a catapult crew. And he stuck his hand up too close to the jet, because if you see, look at films of what the jets look like when they're getting ready, the air is coming in so fast it gets chilled, and you can see it going up, curling.
Really?
And that's not even when they're really charging it up to go. They were just having it charged enough, and he stuck his hand up, gave him a thumbs up, sucked him right in.
Through his hand, it sucked that.
Sucked his whole body up.
Damn.
Just like a cloth. Sucked him right up. And luckily the pilot
was on it and shut it down as fast as he could. But see, doesn't it take a minute for the engine to stop?
Oh, of course.
Or it's still.
But the biggest part was stop.
The intake stops.
Right.
Gotcha. It stops sucking in the air from the front.
Well, it doesn't stop. It starts stopping.
Right.
And they can turn it off, and it's still going to wind down.
But it's not going to be like it is when it's revving and pulling as hard as it can.
Not like when he first went up.
Sure. Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's times I sat on a fire tractor right up on the catapults, between catapults 1 and 2. That's right off the nose of the ship, where they would shoot planes off, and they would be shooting one off each side. And I would sit on the fire tractor right in between them, while they're getting ready to go. And watching it is it's really interesting, but it's all really dangerous.
Fuck yeah.
Just being close to something like that and having something go wrong can make lots of people disappear.
Wow. Did you ever see anybody get blown overboard from planes?
And I've seen people almost get blown overboard.
Wow.
One of my friends actually had a jet roll up on his foot and crunched his toes real bad. He was in the sick bay for a week or so.
Pretty much ran over his foot.
Luckily didn't run over.
But it just kind of rolled up onto.
Rolled up onto his foot, right. It had the two wheels in the front, and they're like, 6 inches, not quite 6 inches between them. Between where the rubber would be. And it rolled up on the front of his foot. Crunched him pretty bad.
Could imagine.
Oh, there was other people that had their foot totally run over on the elevator. And the elevator's all graded. You could see down through it what's going on down below.
I'm not sure what you're talking about. The
elevators where they take airplanes and bring them up from the hangar deck up to flight deck level.
So they put them on this graded. It's
a great big thing. They can take one or two airplanes at a time and lower them.
It's just like a graded deck, and they roll them onto the thing, and it rolls them up onto the flight deck. I gotcha. Right. You've seen it in movies.
When that's happening, they have a bunch of horns go off, and these big metal posts come out of the flight deck and stand up with cables on them, so you can't
walk
mindlessly,
right?
Because that can happen.
And you said people's feet. Have
I didn't see
over?
it, but one of the guys before my cruise, he got in the way, and the main mount, one of the wing mounts, rolled over his foot, and it actually grated it through the grates.
Through the grate. Oh, fuck. I didn't understand what you meant at the time, but his foot was standing on the grate, and the foot rolled over. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Like you said, hey, keep your head on a swivel on that flight deck, man. That guy who told you that you gave you that advice, you hold on to me, you don't do anything I don't do. Apparently, that's for a reason, man.
Absolutely.
Holy shit.
Absolutely.
Wow. I'm glad you survived all that, man. Shit, every day, 2 tours of Vietnam. How long was your first tour? Second one was 11 months.
First one I was there for 6.5 months.
So pretty much for 18 months, you were in Vietnam two different tours for total of 18 months.
Yeah.
That's insane. That is absolutely nuts.
We did a lot of flight operations that had nothing to do with Vietnam, though.
Oh,
We'd
really?
come back to the States.
Well, you were in Korea, too.
Well, I was there, but they would do flight operations. But when we came back to the States, we would be in port for a week or so, and then they would go back to sea, and they would do what they call carrier calls. And that would be so the pilots could practice taking off and landing on air. They have to qualify so many times to be able to go to combat.
And did pilots have to continually do that?
Oh, yeah. It wasn't like there was a couple times when we didn't have any, not the air wing wasn't on. When we went to Bremerton, Washington, they were going to do some repairs of the stuff that had blown up. And because we were based out of San Francisco, Alameda Air Station.
Right.
And we went up to Bremerton. We were up there for a couple months. We did repairs. We non-skidded the flight deck, and they did repairs, cutting things off and welding new stuff on that was no good when we got there, but was good when we left. Then we went down to we go to San Diego for a while, and we do more carrier calls, and and then we'd go to and we've been to San Diego. I've been up and down the West Coast, on the Enterprise. We went to Bremerton. That was in Washington, and not too far from Tacoma. They have a big naval base up there in Bremerton, Puget Sound. And then we went to, we go down to San Diego, we go back to Alameda, then we did that a few times. And then we went back to Vietnam. That was going a second tour. Did all that, came back, did some more stuff, up and down the coast. And then we went to, we came to Norfolk. So we went down around the Horn, went across the equator. I am initiated to be a trusty shellback. Before you go across the equator, you're a polywog, and when you go across the equator, they stop on the equator all day and beat you, do terrible things to you, and then when you go across your shellback. And so if I had have stayed on the ship when it came back, because you can only do initiation going from north to south. I would have been a shellback, being able to beat people, but I didn't.
Right.
I left the ship before they came back.
Right.
Oh, and they do treat you bad. I mean, really bad. I mean, they dress up as pirates. All the people that were and
No, they
everybody
don't.
who never been across it has to do it. The captain of the ship, executive officer, anybody.
You're kidding me.
No, it's a naval tradition. That's why I had my ear pierced. I used to have an earring.
So this is real. This is actually a thing.
Oh yeah, all day long.
No,
All day long.
bullshit.
They beat you. They make these things they call shillelaghs. They get these socks and they'd stretch them out and they would stuff them with paper. And then they would let them soak in salt brine. And they would be about this long. And that was what they beat you with. But they only could beat you on the butt. But you had to go around the flight deck all day long on your hands and knees. So they would just, by the time the day was done, you could hardly sit down because you're sweating and when
they
we
did
got
that
to the
to you.
equator, it was hot.
Right.
And so the salt brine,
Right.
and they cut your hair, they smear your face with aircraft grease, and they do all, they put you in this, they erected a great big swimming pool on top of the deck, and you had to get in there with all these big, badass dudes, and they would grab you and dunk you and treat you terrible. I got away with that one. I went over the side, I slid right down along the wall, put my feet on the wall, and shot across the bottom, and got out. They never got a chance to touch me.
Yeah.
That was slick, because I don't like being messed with in the water.
Yeah. Right.
They never liked that. And so then we had to kiss the royal baby's belly. It was some big old chief with aircraft grease on his stomach. He'd get your face and he'd rub it all over.
Are you serious?
And then they would beat you more. Between everything that you had to go through, they'd beat you with these shillelaghs, and
Oh, that's
then
too
they
much.
cut your hair, they put you in the barber seat and tell you to sing.
Sing.
I was laughing. Sing. They just cut it. They leave some hanging there.
That's funny.
So pretty much after it was done that day, pretty much everybody cut all their hair off.
Right, that's pretty funny. So it was just like it was a form of like naval hazing to some extent, kind of.
Yeah, it was.
That's pretty funny.
That was,
That's awesome.
being inducted into the realm of Davy Jones's locker, and you become a trusty shellback. That means you've been around the world, at least from north to south across the equator. And then we went around the Horn, South America, and then we came up.
You couldn't go through the Panama Canal?
No, way too big.
Really?
Oh yeah, they wouldn't even attempt it. Enterprise was way too big.
How long did that trip take going all the way down around the Horn?
Oh, it took a month and a half, something like that.
How close was the closest you ever got to Antarctica?
Well, we got really close.
Really?
You could almost see
The wall, the ice wall?
Well, we didn't really get to see the ice wall.
How long, seeing how far away you were from Antarctica, how long do you think it would have taken the aircraft carrier to get there if you guys wanted to go?
A day, maybe less.
Wow.
I mean, the Enterprise can cook. We did speed runs, and we get up to like 48 knots. I mean, that's about 53 miles an hour.
On an aircraft carrier that size on the water.
A city.
That's crazy.
It's really crazy. The ship would shake because we did high speed runs off the coast of California just to see how fast.
How fast you could go.
Actually, they don't really know how fast it could go because
they didn't push it.
No, they'd only take it so far because if they could actually shake the ship apart.
Damn.
I mean, we're talking 8 nuclear reactors on the ship and 4 giant screws. The propellers, it took 2 huge cranes to take one propeller off.
That's crazy.
When they took it, they put us in dry dock and they're putting new screws on. 2 huge cranes to take one propeller off, one screw.
That's
and
bonkers.
we had 4 of them.
Damn.
Yeah.
So 53 miles an hour on the water in a moving city, essentially.
Yep.
That is absolutely crazy.
And then they would do these high speed turns. I mean, you had to literally get like this, and all you could see over here was sky, and all you could see down here was water.
No shit.
I mean, they could make some.
And it was moving fast enough to keep you on the deck as you.
Well, if you could. I mean, if you laid down like a ball, you'd roll off.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. You'd had to put your legs like this.
You had to actually lean into it.
Absolutely.
No shit.
Yeah, absolutely. When they were getting ready for flight operations or recoveries, they would turn into the wind and then they would kick it in the ass because they want it easier for the jets to take off and easier for jets to land when they're coming into the wind. I mean, you could literally, not just me, but anybody, big guys, didn't matter. You could actually, once they kicked in the ass, you could actually stand with your feet and just lay back into the wind and you wouldn't fall down. It would keep you up. And bigger guys than me, big guys. So it was kind of neat. When you were walking forward, you had to lean forward and walk.
Right. Damn, no shit.
Oh, yeah.
That's crazy. So like that scene in Top Gun where they like kick the football and it like goes out and like comes back. Like,
I don't remember that thing, but easy. I mean, you couldn't.
Well, maybe it wasn't Top Gun. Maybe it was a different movie. I can't remember. I just remember this. Yeah, I just remember like kick a football out this way and it just goes.
Yeah, no, I don't. I wouldn't want to have a catch
swinging out the other direction.
Yeah, if they were really moving along, no, there would have been ridiculous. I mean, even just to have a catch with a hard ball would have been a major deal.
With a baseball?
Yeah, you'd have to throw it to throw it up in the air to catch. No. Especially if they're going to have launch or a recovery, because they turn into the wind. They want the wind blowing across, and they kick it in the ass.
So it helps the planes get up in the air,
and then it helps the plane slow down.
And then when you say you kick it in the ass, they turn it up. They fucking start going as fast as they can into the wind.
Not as fast as they can,
but as fast as they comfortably can for launch
and
recovery missions. No shit.
Yeah.
What a trip, man! And that must be kind of that's got to be intense, because when you're not just doing it in calm waters. They're not just like, oh, let's go anchor somewhere and be still.
Now, whatever the weather's like, if we're especially combat, I mean, you fly.
No shit.
It doesn't matter. When we were in Korea, you couldn't see anything, and they were doing flight operations. Yeah,
that's crazy.
I mean, you'd be up. They move everybody away from the stern of the ship when they're having recoveries.
Right.
Except like the crash crew.
Right.
You had to be out there close, ready to go. And you could look down the flight deck, because we're talking 1,100 feet. And that's long. That's almost 4 football fields.
That's crazy, yeah.
Figure there's 300 yards,
or 300
feet, 900 feet, 1,200 feet. That's
4, yeah.
Well, it's 3, but still, and it's 100 yards wide.
Well, 1,200 feet would be 4 football fields.
And it's it was we were 1,100 and something.
That's insane. That's huge, man. That's a really crazy experience. I'd like to go with you. I know we went to see the Iowa a few years ago on Veterans Day. I'd like to go see an aircraft carrier with you. I'd like to go check it out.
I'd like to take you to see one, because it's not like anything. My dad was in the Army Air Corps in the Second World War. When we came into Norfolk, my mom and my dad, they drove down from New Jersey, and they picked me up and we drove home.
And they saw the aircraft carrier?
I took my dad on the air.
You got to take him on?
He was just like... I mean, to him, it was like a spaceship.
Right.
I mean, he had been around airplanes and all that, but he had no idea what it was like. I took him out on the flight deck just to let him look around. Oh, my God. He was just like overwhelmed.
Wow.
Overwhelmed.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I definitely want to touch some more on some of the things some of the people that you had experiences with in the service, and some of the situations, including the fire, at a different time.
Sure.
But I think, today that was fantastic. I think we'll wrap it up. And so everybody, so you guys know, my name is Eddie Booz. This is my father, Ed Booz. And I just wanted to document some really... a lot of times we don't get to talk. We don't get to explore these types of things with our dads, and get to talk to our dads, and about this types of stuff, and really pick their brains about some of the experiences that they had, in life. And I just think it's valuable, and I want to have as many of these conversations with my dad as possible coming up here. So we're gonna start just having these chats, and I'm gonna be posting them online for you guys to see as well, and hopefully you guys will resonate with this somehow too. And again, this is my father, Ed Booz, and we're gonna be talking about all kinds of stuff. And so join us here next time. Thank you guys. I appreciate you watching. Take care.
My street with a knife held in my back. Not an enemy to secretly creep to position at the tap. We gotta